It's incredibly isolating. White supremacy isolates you from the people that can actually help you to heal. It gives you these wounds and then it won't allow you to heal. Hello, welcome to Kalia's Corner. My name is Kalia and this is my corner, obviously. And this is a channel where I talk about popular culture and how it relates to my experiences. You can call them video essays, but I'm just talking about myself. So you saw the topic of the video, so let's get into it. Today I want to talk about the suburban black girl experience because I feel like it's a very niche experience that's not talked about enough. I know personally growing up around the suburbs, which I'll kind of get into, I didn't see a lot of media that pertained to black girls living in the suburbs. So I wanted to talk about it because I want to validate all black experiences. So obviously I kind of grew up around the suburbs. I say around because I grew up in apartments until I was about 13 years old, and eventually when I was 13 I moved into a suburban house. Even though I didn't live in the actual suburbs, I was very ingrained in suburban culture. I went to school with people that lived in the suburbs and I still lived near the suburbs. I feel like a very common experience for black girls who live in the suburbs is that you feel out of place regardless of where you go. So, for example, like hanging out with white or black people made me feel incredibly out of place. Although I did lean towards hanging out with white people because I did feel like my weirdness and my quirks were more accepted in that space. And I do feel like this is a problematic rhetoric to keep maintaining because even though there were black people that were maintaining this monolithic notion of what black people aren't a monolith. And I feel like I held a very monolithic view of black people that I kind of separated myself from. I separated myself from blackness due to these black people who were talking about black people as if they were a monolith. And I just feel like if I was around the right kind of people in general, then I would have felt a lot more included and a lot more safe in that space. So, going to the idea of the monolithic black person, I do think that there was specifically one type of black person that was uplifted in the predominantly white suburban area. And I feel like this black person fit into the idea of what white people thought a black person was. So essentially, they would have like the really extroverted, loud, very outgoing personality that a lot of white people associate black people to have. And any black person that didn't fit into this narrative was not of interest to them because they didn't prove their point of what a black person is supposed to be. I feel like, in regards to like predominantly white schools, predominantly white spaces, there is some sort of social hierarchy. I think of like all the really cliche high school, middle school movies where there's like a popular group and a nerdy group and all of the in between groups, like Mean Girls and all of that stuff. That stuff is like very true for predominantly white schools. There is a social hierarchy. I feel like this specific type of black person that was uplifted was more likely to be able to fit into this social hierarchy if they just maintained their role. And I also feel like the people that were mainly falling into this line were black men, specifically black men who decided to reject black women. I feel like the social hierarchy in itself was not created for black people, but if you reject essentially the blackest parts of yourself, and I feel like black women, we can't get away from being black. We are through and through 100% seen as black first before we're even seen as a woman. It's so much easier for black men to kind of forgo isolation, social isolation, if they decide to reject black women completely to fit into this social hierarchy. If you really think about it, the social hierarchy was not created for black women at all. A lot of black women in predominantly white schools will tell you that it was hell. It was the absolute worst time because you couldn't hide from your black womanness. There was no mistaking you as anything other than a black woman. Nobody would allow you to forget that. I think going along with this like rejection from black men, I also just like felt this very visceral hatred from a lot of my peers and I never understood why it was happening because they never gave me like a good reason as to why they hated me. I would be hanging out with like some of my friends, and there would be people there that they hung out with as well, and they would just not talk to me or not acknowledge me or not look at me. And when I would like ask my friends like, "Hey, why are they acting like that?" They would be like, "Oh, they just don't like you." And I would ask them like, "Why don't you like me? Like, what have I done to you?" And they could never provide me with a straight answer. And I feel like, because I also live in the South, racism is very integral to Southern culture. And I feel like, especially in the suburbs, it thrives because it is a predominantly white space. Living in the southern suburbs, there's a legacy of racism, of white supremacy, of anti blackness that has prevailed throughout generations. So that's kind of been passed down to these peers that now go to school with me and interact with me on a daily basis. I think another really popular experience within the Black suburban girl community is being the only Black friend in an all white friend group and being identified through your white friends, like not having an identity outside of who you associate with. I know for a really long time it bothered me because I was never referred to as my name, because I really feel like a lot of people that I went to school with didn't know my name or care to know my name, because to them, the only thing that was worth identifying me as was being a friend of a white person, being a friend of my white friend. I would always be referred to as, oh, she's so and so's friend. And this would be incredibly damaging to my self esteem because it felt like I didn't have my own identity outside of who I was associating with, specifically outside of whiteness. I also feel like a very common experience within being the only Black friend in an all white friend group is not experiencing romantic attraction and desire in the same way that your white friends are. In fact, I didn't experience any like romantic attraction or reciprocal romantic attraction until I was in college. And I feel like a lot of suburban Black girls go through their schooling years with very minimal relationship experience. And I think that this is a detriment because it causes a lot of Black girls to have incredibly low self esteem. I know for me, it did. When I got into my first relationship, because I had this low self esteem, because I had this scarcity mindset of, oh, this is like a rare thing that's happening to me and it's not going to happen again, I held on to this person that didn't fit my needs, and it caused me to spiral into depression. I also think, in regards to attraction, there were like attractive Black girls within these spaces. The thing is that they just usually weren't Black girls that looked completely like me. They were the light-skinned mixed Black girls who everybody kind of viewed as exotic and fetishized. And obviously that's incredibly terrible, but I think being on the other end of that, being completely undesirable, is also very detrimental to one's self-esteem as well. I see a lot of this celebrating one type of Black girl still in media today. Like, I think we have made advancements when it comes to colorism. I do think, obviously, that there is a lot of colorism that it still needs to be addressed within our community. I do think a lot of the Black girls that are being uplifted in media, like on TikTok and on social media and all of this stuff, they are the ones that have features that are associated with Eurocentricity. And I say features that are associated with Eurocentricity because we know that Africa is the place where all features have derived from, where all life has derived from. So inherently, all features are African. But features that are associated with Eurocentricity, these European features, these features that we associate with white people, when they are seen in Black people, are usually why a lot of these Black women are being uplifted. Or they'll have like a full beat face, or they'll have like the 22-inch bust down wigs and all of this stuff going on. It basically prevents any Black girl who fits outside of this narrative from being celebrated and uplifted as well. So, kind of going back to the romantic desire aspect, like I said, a lot of Black men were just not checking for me. So, I think for me, that kind of resulted in a lack of romantic desire for Black men for a really long time because I just felt like they were never going to be into me. They made themselves seem unattainable to me. I leaned towards white men as a result, which is also unfortunate because white men kind of didn't even register black women as an option. Like it just didn't make sense to them for them to be with a black woman, to even consider that as an option. But again, I did lean towards white men because, and I'm gonna say something a little bit controversial. Just bear with me, okay? I'm gonna say something a little bit controversial. The idea of being with a white man, of having a white man desire me in a romantic way, would not only mean that I was attractive and desirable, but it would also mean that I had value within this predominantly white space. So, in other words, if I was with a white man, I would know that I was beautiful. I would know that I was desirable. Okay, before you click off, let me explain. So, in a predominantly white society, in a predominantly white community, white men are seen as the pinnacle of attractiveness, unfortunately. Even if they are just like incredibly average looking, incredibly mid, they are seen as the pinnacle of attractiveness within a predominantly white community. So if they're like on this higher end of the spectrum and black women being the complete opposite of white men, obviously we're going to be on the very low end of the spectrum. We're the least desirable, we're the least wanted. So to be wanted by someone who is seen as the pinnacle of attractiveness would make your value go up. That's how I viewed it for a really long time because I did not have a lot of romantic experiences because I was seen as less desirable than my white peers. If I was able to make a white man desire me, then that would mean essentially that I've won. That would mean that I'm able to climb the social hierarchy, to climb and build my status within this predominantly white community. I think that I felt so much shame surrounding believing this for the longest time that I've just never expressed it to anybody. I feel like a lot of the time we have shame surrounding the self-hating ideology that has been ingrained in us, that has been pervasive within our communities. And I think a lot of like pro-black people will make you feel weak and ignorant for having fallen into this in the first place. And I just want to say, like, there shouldn't be a sense of shame surrounding once being self hating because this self hating ideology doesn't come from you, it comes from the society around you. It's a systemic issue. Self hatred in a racial context is a systemic issue. It's not created individually, it's not an individual issue. It's a systemic communal community issue. And I think when you are consistently told that like healing is your responsibility, which I agree with to a certain extent, but if you're told like healing is your responsibility for an issue that's not individual, for an issue that's systemic, it can make it incredibly hard for people to want to do the work to better themselves, to unlearn the ignorant rhetoric that they have learned. I think in order to address systemic issues, you have to address them with community healing. You can't address them with individual healing. I mean, you can have individual healing, but it's not going to be as effective as having communal community healing. I think this like idea of hyper individualism within the black community is a result of white supremacy. It's incredibly isolating. White supremacy isolates you from the people that can actually help you to heal. It gives you these wounds and then it won't allow you to heal. So I think we need to all be conscious of how much of the issues we deal with on a daily basis are communal issues, systemic issues, and how much we need community in order to heal these wounds. I want to go back to the idolization of white men in relationships with black women because I do feel like I saw an uptick of black women being interested in white men. And I feel like it was definitely enhanced like in 2020 by the election results. I also feel like it's enhanced by a lot of these self-hating black men having a platform and talking about how much they hate black women, how much black women are just too ghetto and too loud and da 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 da, like all of this stuff. And there was this song, and I forgot who it's by. She has like a white boy on her roster, and he's feeding her pasta and lobster. Okay. I feel like a lot of black women kind of took that to heart. Like it was just a little silly trend, but it transformed into something serious. It transformed into a movement of a lot of black women embracing dating outside of their race. And I want to preface that there is nothing wrong with dating outside of your race, because there's not anything wrong with going where you are loved, with going where you are appreciated. And I know for a lot of black women, it just does not feel like that with black men. It does not feel safe and secure with a lot of black men. And I understand that. But I do want to say, I do want to say that a lot of white men, majority of white men, still racist. Still racist, still homophobic, still conservative. I mean, look at the election results of this past year. Yeah. So I just feel like I want people to have like discernment when it comes to dating outside of their race and realizing that the grass is not greener on the other side. It's just not. The dating pool in itself for black women is absolute shit. It's terrible. And it's unfortunately always going to be shit for as long as people view black women as these sexual entities, which I know a lot of white men who are into black women fetishize black women. They don't see them as viable options for a partner, but they don't have any problem with seeing them as sexual objects, with having sex with them. And I think a lot of people confuse lust for love. And I know that a lot of white men were jumping on this trend at the time, saying how much they love black women, to get all of this clout, to get all these black women in their comments talking about some okay white chocolate. Stand up. Stand up. Because they do not care about you the way you think they do. So sorry. And if you have found a white man that loves you, then good for you. But I am saying that for black women, unfortunately, like at least in America, that's what I can speak for, it's always going to be hard when it comes to dating, because these men do not see us as people. And it's no different with a white man. I also want to talk about like, because I feel like this was going around a lot when I was first getting into video essays and stuff, but the idea of the average black girl, I feel like the black people that were uplifted, along with the like stereotypical idea of what a black person was, I feel like a lot of the black people that were uplifted were those who were constantly in service to the community with their exceptionality. If you were not seen as exceptional in some sort of way, like if you could not provide a talent or a service, if basically you were not servicing white people in some sort of way, it didn't really matter what you thought. It didn't really matter who you were, because you didn't stand out. And I feel like for black girls specifically, we always have to be standing out. We can't be okay. We can't be good. We can't even be great. We have to be fantastic. We have to be amazing in order to be recognized, in order to be addressed. I know personally for me, I didn't really feel exceptional in anything except for my grades. So I would constantly strive every day and study so hard for hours on end, doing schoolwork, doing coursework, to maintain this air of exceptionality that allowed me to be viewed as something valuable and to be of service to my white community. And I just want to say, like, being an average black girl, and I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit more in this last part of the video, but being an average black girl, I feel like it's so stigmatized against, because we are constantly having to raise the bar in order for us to even be acknowledged, in order for us to even be seen as something worthwhile of spending your money on, spending your attention on, spending your time on. But finally, I feel like the most like common experience for a black suburban girl is unlearning the anti-black rhetoric that we have been conditioned under since childhood, since birth, since conception. In high school, I did a project on the Black Power Fist and the origins of that. And I did so much research on like Black movements, on the Black Panther Party, on all of that. Because, of course, my school was not teaching me that because it was a predominantly white school. It just did not see the value in teaching all of our history unless it was talking about slavery in great detail. And I remember being super angry with the world around me, being super angry and hating the suburbs and wanting to move to a city and wanting to be more free when it came to expressing my blackness and all of this stuff. When I did eventually go to college in a city, my first college that I went to, when I did go to college and move to a city, I had these like grandiose fantasies of having a Black friend group. And I was never able to fulfill that because one thing that being a suburban Black girl ruins for you is also your ability to make meaningful connections with Black people. I feel like a lot of this comes from me having an idea of what a lot of Black people in college were going to be like, a lot of Black people in general were going to be like. I kind of just thought like every Black person grew up the same way that I grew up. And I feel like when you go to college, you see so many people of different backgrounds and creeds that you realize like my experience is not universal. I would be confused when I would see these big Black groups of friends and I would be unable to connect with them. I would be talking to a Black person and I could just tell that they were not interested in talking to me. And I just felt super out of place. I felt like I was not Black enough. And I feel like a lot of that also comes from the kind of unspoken rules and regulations that the Black community does have in order to be seen as Black enough. So for example, like going back to the idea of the average Black girl, I feel like a lot of suburban Black girls can relate to this idea of feeling average and feeling inferior to a lot of the Black girls that they may have met outside of the suburbs. And I remember seeing a TikTok of someone talking about how they felt intimidated by Black girls once they went to college because it was so much different than what they were used to. When it comes to not feeling Black enough, I've never really felt not Black enough when I was around white people. I felt incredibly Black. But like whenever I was around Black people, whenever I was around my own community, I was constantly reminded the ways in which I lacked Blackness. I feel like when it comes to Black girls, we get it hit the hardest, but we're also policing each other the hardest. Like I know a lot of people on TikTok will, a lot of Black women on TikTok will post like videos of their hair, their makeup and stuff. And if they're a beginner, the comments are absolutely ruthless. They're terrible. And it's never a white woman talking about how atrocious their hair looks or how atrocious their makeup looks. It's Black women. It's us doing that. And I felt like my Blackness was always being questioned by Black people. And it made me feel like I can never be Black enough because there's always this bar that is preventing me from feeling like I can be included in my own community. And like I said, like these unspoken rules and regulations when it comes to the community and when it comes to being Black, they're heavily enforced. And I feel like Gen Z is doing a lot more to kind of break down these stereotypes and be like, we don't need to enforce these kind of rules and regulations on people in order for them to like fit into this idea of Blackness. Because Blackness itself is unique. Blackness presents itself in different ways. But I do feel like, especially in the South, there are still a lot of those people that are like, well, this is the way to be Black and this is the only way to be Black. I just want to say, like, regardless of like how we are, where we are, what we do, we all deserve to be respected. We all deserve for our Blackness to be respected. Our experiences are not less valid because we didn't grow up in Black areas, because we didn't grow up around Black people. But yeah, thank you so much for watching my video. I felt really connected to this video, I felt like a lot more passionate about this topic, especially since I am very close to it. I didn't use any references or anything for this video. I didn't really do any research. I just kind of talked about my own experience and how I felt like it related to popular culture. I do kind of want to make a part two because I know that there are things that I've missed within the suburban black girl community. So if you feel like I've missed anything, please comment below and I will try to make a part two regarding the comments that you guys create. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and my Substack and my TikTok are linked in the description box below. If you want to see what I've got going on, I would love that. I'm thinking about releasing a new Substack essay soon, so would love if you would go and read that. But thank you.